Welcome to the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition. I am Christina Veselak. I'm the founder and director of the Academy and of a nonprofit called Eating Protein Saves Lives Incorporated. And Donald, if you haven't seen it yet, I think that some of the resources on that website would be wonderful for what you're trying to achieve, with your dream. And in
Yes,
fact,
yeah.
I don't think it's tomorrow. I think it's next Friday at 1:30. I'm giving a webinar, which I give every month. It's recorded on that website, but I give it live every month called Feeding Recovery. And it's 40
Oh, wow.
minutes and it just walks through in very simple language and really nice pictures why giving your brain what it needs to function matters to early recovery.
hmm
Why, what, and when we eat matters to early recovery. So I really encourage you to step in and watch, either watch that recording from the website or come in live to the webinar next Friday.
I will. Thank you very much for the invite.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good resource for you. So I've been a licensed psychotherapist working in the addiction field for actually 40 years. I'm currently still licensed in Colorado. I used to have a very active private practice as a relapse prevention specialist and a mental health nutritionist. And I'm now putting my practice to one side to really focus on both the school and the nonprofit. Um, I've consulted for supplement companies. I've worked in 2 different IV amino acid detox programs and seen miracles in those programs. And I've really helped get this information into residential treatment programs, as well as just teaching all my students for years now how to integrate this into their own practices. So I'm absolutely committed to continuing to learn and grow myself and apply everything that keeps on being learned about nutritional psychiatry, orthomolecular psychiatry, mental health nutrition, etc., to my work. And I'm just passionate. I want to share this with everybody because I've seen it transform lives and I've seen it change lives. So why does the world need you? Why does the world need people getting more highly trained in this approach to mental health and addiction recovery? And it's because the statistics are horrific. In spite of all of the money and time and effort and expertise and passion put into both the war against drugs and addiction and, in the mental health field, things are just continuing to go from bad to worse. So 30, they're estimating a minimum of 32 million people currently using illegal drugs. But of those, at least 8 million people have a drug use disorder. At least 15 million people have an alcohol use disorder. And of course, this has grown tremendously through COVID. And most tragic of all, there have been 700,000 people dying from drug overdoses since the year 2000, and 200,000 of them alone happened last year. And this is just tragic. I moved from Denver to a rural part of West Virginia that has had the highest drug overdose death rate in the entire country. And I see it every time I drive out of, the little development where I live. It's just ravaged the county where I live. It's ravaged the city that's half an hour drive away. And it just breaks my heart. So this is why I do what I do, because too many people have died and we have part of the answer. And then if you look at mental health, in 2016 even, they were estimating that 1 in 6 American adults were taking at least one psychiatric drug over the course of the year. Over 80% of those people reported long-term use, which these drugs were not intended to. These drugs stop working, but because the body's become dependent upon them, you can't just stop taking them. So psychiatrists now add drugs, add drugs, add drugs. And we know people who've been on 10 different psychiatric meds at the same time and are still deeply, deeply suffering. We have students who came from there. They're estimating at least 47 million people, this is last year, are living with a mental health condition. And this was 1.5 million people over the previous year. Okay, this is COVID. And so we know that there's this horrific epidemic of mental health issues among children and teenagers. And the poor psychiatrists, their toolbox is so tiny that all they can do is offer medication to these children. And these meds weren't designed for children's brains, but it's the only tools they have. And if you look at a country like England, it's not quite as bad in this country, but it can be pretty bad. I just talked to a friend in Denver who said that she's trying to get her daughter diagnosed for special needs, and the waiting list is a year long. In the UK, Mark was sharing that it can be a year before a depressed or anxious teenager or child can get the help they need. This is just tragic. This is horrific. And so we have to ask the question as to why. Why, with all of this time, money, effort, research put into this, are things this bad? And we think it's because there's a missing leg of the stool. So we've all been taught, and I think taught correctly, that addictive issues and mental health issues are driven by the brain. They have a very strong biochemical component with psychosocial and spiritual elements. The psychosocial includes trauma and isolation and lack of life skills and lack of, relaxation skills, so on and so forth. The spiritual leg of the school, at its base is, lack of meaning and purpose in life, lack of connection, lack of values. And all of this contributes to mental health issues and addictive disorders. However, addiction is actually driven by the brain. It's driven by the brain. But the only option we're given to address the biochemistry of addiction is medication and more medication. Nobody ever talks about what is it that the brain needs to function optimally. And yet this research is at least 50, 60, 70 years old. We know the nutrients that the brain needs to function optimally, but it's never talked about in recovery circles or in clinical circles. And so we think that what's happening is there is a missing leg to the stool. And if you've ever tried to sit on a three-legged stool with only two legs, you know what happens. Because in all reality, people cannot do the work of recovery or of therapy if they have a starving brain. Now, much research is increasingly indicating that specific nutrient deficiencies correlate and sometimes even cause mental health issues. We know that deficiency of omega-3 fatty acids, and they've dropped by 80% over the last 150 years. We're now eating 80% less of essential omega-3 fatty acids. Well, one of the deficiency signs is depression and anxiety. We know that the deficiency signs of not enough B1, B2, B3, B6, B12 are depression and anxiety. We know that a deficiency symptom of low vitamin D, and much of the world is deficient in vitamin D, is depression and even schizophrenia. And yet this is never talked about. Conversely, research is also indicating that many Americans, as well as people from all around the world, are deficient in many micronutrients and possibly even macronutrients such as protein. People have told me, oh, Americans get enough protein, sometimes too much. And it's like, okay, not the people who land in my office chronically relapsing or with intractable depression and anxiety. You ask them how much protein they're getting. And, women need a minimum of 40 to 60 grams of protein a day. And yet many of my clients come into treatment with me, maybe getting 10 grams of protein, maybe getting 10 grams. And same thing with the men, because we've not been taught that it matters. And in fact, there's all of this propaganda right now about going plant-based, and it's very hard to get enough protein and the right protein and nutrients when you go fully plant-based. Not impossible, it's just really hard. Research also indicates that robust nutrition supports not just mental health, but also addiction recovery. And this research goes back to the 70s and 80s. This is not new information. So this course is for mental health and addiction treatment professionals who want to make more of a difference. We were not taught this in school. Most treatment programs and professionals are ignoring the need to optimally feed the starving brain. So there's this huge gap. Nutrition professionals and health coaches who want to apply your wonderful knowledge to addiction and mental health, because nutrition schools and health coaching schools also ignore addiction and mental health. And thus many nutritionists feel insecure about taking on and helping these clients. But it's also for the layperson who simply wants to learn more for themselves or their families. And many of these students have actually gone ahead and started new businesses and even new careers. Very, very exciting. So this course is for anyone who wants personal support, care, and community as you grow into a more full version of yourself, both professionally and personally. I just want to see what's in chat here. Yes, exactly. Teachers use drugs for behavior management in the classroom, and the effects of early exposure to lead and other heavy metals and mold and pesticides, wreaks horrific damage on the brain and can lead to a full range of addictive and physical disorders, which we actually talk about in our level 2. So we have many levels of offerings, and in a few minutes, Mark will kind of go through everything that we offer. I'm going to start from the highest level here and talk about our 2 certification courses. So level 1 certification is a 10-month program. It's a 6-month training program followed by a 4-month internship where you work cases with each other and build confidence and competence. So in this certification, you will be equipped to understand the relationship between specific nutrient deficiencies and mental health and behavioral symptoms. So just what I was just mentioning. You'll be able to assess the potential need for amino acid and nutrient support of neurotransmitter function in clients who are detoxifying and recovering from all sorts of things, substance use disorders, other addictive behaviors, psychotropic drug dependencies, depression, anxiety, insomnia, and other behavioral disorders. You'll be able to design an individualized and targeted amino acid and supplement protocol to address this potential need. You'll be able to identify common insufficiencies in diet, such as missing a meal or overconsumption of sugar, which may contribute to the above symptoms. You'll be able to give information about the 5-star pro-recovery diet, which may address these insufficiencies. And you'll be able to support clients in making and maintaining these dietary and lifestyle changes. So we have an assessment tool that we use in level 1 called the amino acid therapy chart. And it's how we assess for amino acid need and dosing. So somebody will, say, Christina, my sister's depressed. What amino acid should I give her? I don't know. Show me the chart and, I'll be able to figure out where to start. So this was actually designed by Julia Ross, who has been using amino acid therapy for 35 years with people with eating disorders and other addictive disorders. I met her 35 years ago. And Dr. Charles Gant and a couple of other people. And this questionnaire, very simple questionnaire, is based on the research that was done decades ago, identifying what the neurotransmitter deficiency symptoms are. So we just ask people to rate themselves on these deficiency symptoms from the scale of 0 to 10. And it's like mind-blowing for people to really see, oh, you mean this is a neurotransmitter deficiency, these cravings, this depression, this anxiety. Yeah. And I can do something about it. Yeah. And we'll show you how. And so Mark's got some wonderful stories about this in his practice.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. Yeah, I was just, I mean, I'd been using amino acids in my kind of primary area, which was addiction recovery. So I'd been using a program from Joan Matthews Larson, which in her book 7 Weeks to Sobriety, which I'd been using for several years before I came to the Academy with Christina, to actually bring people, to allow people to reduce safely off of alcohol, kind of in a home situation, provided it was medically safe for them to do so. And I mean, just incredible results. I mean, it's taken, I've never had anybody that's taken more than 2 weeks to come off of whatever level of alcohol they were on. I mean, my most impressive was a lady who came off of 6.5 litres, sorry, 6 litres of red wine per day. And she came off of that. I don't know, right? I don't know, but it's like, I couldn't even, I don't think I could drink 6 litres of water a day, let alone alcohol. And actually she, using the whole nutrient therapy approach, she came off in like 48 hours, and 7 years later, she's still sober and living a great life. But when it comes, what I hadn't used was this chart, right? Just a A4 little chart, a bunch of questions, ask people to put in scores on symptoms 0 to 10. And what we get is a result like on the right hand side there, which breaks down for us the level of depletion in each of their neurotransmitter pathways, or neurotransmitter and mood pathways, because you'll see in there, we've also got the sleep pathway in there. And obviously there are neurotransmitters involved in there as well. And on the right, you'll see we've got the hyperglycemic or reactive hyperglycemic pathway. And actually for both of you here, Katina, when you're looking at mood for people, this is exactly the tool which will open the door to very rapid change for most people. And the same, Donald, for the people that you would come across as well. And incidentally, I've actually done what you're looking to do. I've actually run properties to accommodate people on addiction recovery journeys. So I know a fair bit about what turns up on the door and what the challenges are. But let me just perhaps tell you about 1 or 2 scenarios that I came across, and I think these are quite pertinent to perhaps both of the areas that you're of your interests. So I was called into work with a young man, or take a look to see whether I could help this young man. His mother had come to a workshop that I was running, which was entitled, why you, the family, need to decide the date that your loved one stops their addiction. So that was kind of the workshop this mum had come to, and she rang me a couple of days afterwards and said, look, she said, my son's kind of not exactly in the addiction scenario. She said, but he's a nightmare. She said he's been under mental health services since the age of 4. Is there anything you can do? She said he's just terrible. Said his mood will go from 0 to violence against property and people, are just like that. He has a kind of a lack of energy. He's depressed, he's angry, he's stressed. Anyway, I went round to kind of do an assessment with him, and she showed me his psychiatric file. She had a copy of his psychiatric file, and it was like nearly 2.5 inches thick for this lad, and he was 14.5, I think, when I went to see him. So I sat with this piece of paper. I sat with this one A4 sheet of paper, asked him to score each of these things. Now, normally we can do that. I would normally do that in around 10 to 20 minutes with people. Because of his instability of moods, it took me nearly 1 hour and 40 minutes to get through those questions with him, right? Which included him taking time out to, punch the wall and go out and smash some stuff up in the garden, storm off up the road, come back again. And I mean, it was tough. Anyway, we did get there in the end, and it was very clear that there were a number of big major depletions on his neurotransmitter pathways. So one of the great things about aminos is that we can actually trial them with somebody. If we're in the room with them, we can trial them there and then to help to get to an effective dose. Now, I kind of always work on the basis that I will work with somebody with the neurotransmitter depletion that's impacting them the most. Normally only work with one at a time, because I want them to see and understand, and I want to know whether we're getting an effect of that particular amino acid against that particular behavioral or mood experience that they're experiencing. I'll tell you very quickly about a chappie that I did that with on a one-off basis in a moment. But in this particular case, there was so much going on, and so much of mood irregulation going on for this chap, this young man. I actually unusually started him and trialed him on 3 aminos all at the same time. So I trialed him and said to him, look, just in this anger piece that you've got, this kind of rage that you've got, and feeling totally out of control, where would you put that overall on a scale of 0 to 10? 10 being completely unmanageable, 0 being everything's just fine. And he said 10. So I trialed him with the 2 of the 3 aminos. And we just took a little break. I said, we'll take a break, and we'll see where you're at in kind of half an hour's time. And half an hour time, I said, does that number feel any different at all? And he said, maybe a little bit. He said, it feels like the edge has gone off of it. So I actually gave him some more aminos of the 2 aminos, and said, okay, well, let's just give it, kind of another half hour. And half hour later, and I said to him, okay, so just thinking about that number again, overall, about where you were before we started and where you are now an hour later. You were 10. Where does it feel now? He said, you know what? He said, I think it feels kind of like a 7. And he was. You could just see he was calmer, much calmer. anyway, over the following kind of 4 days, I think it was, I carried on working with him, his mum, by phone, just checking in four times a day, as he was supposed to take each dose, just gradually being able to trial the doses to get them to kind of the right place. Anyway, about 5 days later, he'd gone round to see his uncle, and so his mum's brother, and the uncle came over to see the mum later, and she said, "So who was?" He said, "Who was that you just sent over to see me?" He said, "Because it looked like my nephew." He said, "But it wasn't the nephew. It wasn't my nephew, was it?" He said, "You've cloned another kid who just looks like my nephew." So he said, that was a clone, wasn't it? He said, "That's what you've done." He said, "You found a way to clone a much calmer version." He said, "I have never had such a calm, wonderful couple of hours with him. He didn't he didn't get up and storm out once. He didn't lose his temper. He was focused. We actually had a conversation. He was even nice to me." He said he didn't even swear at me in the 2 hours that he was there. He said, and that's just never happened. He said, what, it's a clone, right? This is what's going on. And the lad was absolutely blown away with how much he changed in less than a week, after being, spending 10 years working with psychiatry. So, that just incredible. And I mean, he kind of went on to, over the course of time, I mean, his psychiatric medications just were able to be reduced. He was saying, "Look, I don't want that stuff. I don't need it anymore." And we were able to kind of work the balances. And actually the guy, the young man, came to be living a much more normal life. And he'd gone from, he'd smashed up 3 cars, 2 flats, numerous televisions. He'd beaten up, a number of girlfriends. Almost every family member had been beaten up by him, and the whole thing just changed, very dramatically. But one of the things I love about the speed of aminos is that this fact that you can trial with people and they'll hit the brain in 10 to 20 minutes, and you can actually figure out whether you've got that effective dose for somebody. And that was so powerful that I actually started a Live Life Beyond club, just for people who wanted to live life a little bit better than where they were today, right? Whether they were struggling with, a little bit of anxiety or a bit of depression, or just kind of lack of energy or lack of motivation, or whatever. And what we did was, when they came to their first club nights, it was 2.5 hours, we kind of all got together. And the first thing we did with somebody was their amino acid therapy chart on their first evening at the club. And we would actually send them away. We would trial them during the evening with the appropriate amino acid, which was going to impact the behavioral issues that they were most struggling with. So we trial them during the evening so that we could understand if they were getting, a response. Where that was appropriate, incidentally, because there are some amino acids that you wouldn't give to somebody in an evening. You wouldn't give them L-tyrosine, for example, which tends to be, is there about, one of the things is it boosts energy. So we don't want to be doing that, otherwise they'll still be awake at like 4 o'clock in the morning and not very happy. So where appropriate, we would do that. And where appropriate, we would then introduce other things, working by phone with them over the next day or so. And what was so great was that people would they would experience such a change over the period up until the next week, that the people around them would actually notice what had changed. So we had a lady there who was struggling with depression, and she went from being bedridden to 3 days after starting to take 5-HTP for her depression, she was actually up and about. And it was over the following couple of weeks, her friends and relatives had noticed such a change and said, "Well, what did you do?" And then 2 weeks later, she turned up with another friend. because she'd seen the change in this lady, and she said, God blimey, I want some of that. Right. So she brought a friend along who was struggling with anxiety. So one of the powerful things with this tool is we get straight in, we can very quickly give people well, here we go, here's where your depletions are, and this is what you need to trial. We'll trial that with you, and we'll take that, and people get the change really quickly. And I've even here engaged so many people who didn't want to stop drinking alcohol, didn't want to stop their drugging, because it's really, don't talk to me about stopping alcohol or stopping the drugs. But actually, when I say to them, actually, if I could just take a magic wand and change one thing that causes you a problem in your life, what would it be? And, one of the things that I would have found, actually, Donald, in your situation, lots of people that I was accommodating, the big issue they had was anger. Well, there were two issues. One was lack of energy, and the other was anger. Right. And, when I've worked with people where we've been able to apply amino acids and their anger has disappeared within 48 hours, my God, they are so appreciative. And of course, then we didn't get to need to evict them because they were being angry and causing problems with the other tenants there, right? They were able to engage with other agencies that they needed to engage with because they didn't keep getting thrown out because they were being aggressive towards staff, etc. So there's a huge power to having people in those situations, and Catino, with anybody with any imbalances in mood. This works so incredibly quickly to be able to get people to a stage where you can do other work with them, okay, where you can do health coaching with them, where, Donald, you can have conversations with them, So I'm going to shut up because I will go on about that chart for hours and days, but yeah, it's great, as are aminos.
Yes, they are. Thank you, Mark. However, for all the power of amino acids, they only work around 80% of the time. Now, 80% of the time is pretty good. Okay, that's in fact pretty amazing. But there are those times where amino acids don't do anything, changing up somebody's diet doesn't do anything, nothing changes their distress. And this is because there are underlying physiological issues that have not gotten identified by their medical professionals. And in fact, one of our textbooks for level 1, 7 Weeks to Sobriety by Joan Matthew Larson, goes through and discusses many of these physiological issues that can both lead people into addictive behaviors in the first place and lead to relapse and prevent full recovery. So what are some of these things? So I created level 2 certification, which is an 8-month program to identify, to help my students be able to pinpoint these physiological issues and then direct their clients into the right direction for appropriate treatment. So you will learn how to recognize and assess for the basic symptoms of physiological disorders which impact mental health and addiction recovery, such as hormone imbalance. This could include deficient testosterone or out of balance estrogen and progesterone. For instance, we know that PMS is the time of highest relapse risk in a woman's recovery. Okay, you'll learn about adrenals and thyroid imbalance. You'll learn how to determine if somebody is having digestive issues so that they may be eating the best food in the world, but it's not getting digested or absorbed optimally. There may be candida or gut dysbiosis going on. There may be food allergies and intolerances that are causing all sorts of things, such as ADHD and schizophrenia and depression, etc. We look at toxicity, we look at inflammation, we look at black mold and Lyme disease, and now we're even looking at long COVID. So you'll learn to recognize and assess for the basic symptoms of these. You will be able to recommend certain laboratory tests to help identify these conditions, which your clients can access themselves. So you actually don't have to be a medical professional to say to your client, hey, you have some of the symptoms of this issue. Why don't you get some laboratory testing so that we can confirm it, and then I'll refer you to the right practitioner. You'll be able to provide information about simple nutrient and herbal support shown to be useful in these conditions. For instance, sometimes vinegar works beautifully for heartburn, right? You'll, paradoxically as that sounds, you'll be able to refer to appropriate practitioners then for diagnosis and treatment as necessary. Now, we have an assessment tool for level 2 as well. And that's a document, it's about 6 pages long. So I don't give it to all my clients, only those who have clear physiological distress going on, but it's called the Nutritional Assessment Questionnaire. It's been wandering around functional nutrition circles for a couple of decades. It goes through all the body systems and the key symptoms of these body system disorders, and then you can actually graph it so that you can see what's really going on with your client, and they can see what's going on with them and what the areas and order of priority is, where you actually need to start. Very, very valuable tool. And many people, Mark included, many of my students have found that this is almost the most valuable part of the course for them, because it helps them and their family members, not just their clients. We've had people identify a lot of issues that they've then been able to go on and fix. And one of our textbooks actually goes through every single question in this questionnaire, explains why it's there, and what are some nutritional interventions to address that particular symptom. So just on its own, this is an amazing, amazing tool for you in your own life. So who again will you be able to help? Well, people trying to come off or in withdrawal from psychiatric meds such as Xanax, Prozac, Adderall. People in acute withdrawal from substances such as alcohol, meth, cocaine, opioids, heroin, THC. People who experience a lot of cravings for the above substances, as well as for sugar, caffeine, and other addictive foods, and therefore have a really hard time staying abstinent. Because yes, sugar is also an addictive drug, and many, many of our students and their clients struggle with sugar addiction. And this approach works beautifully for sugar addiction. And then people of all ages, including children, because of course we can use this approach with children as young as the age of 2 who suffer from anxiety, depression, insomnia, ADHD, irritability, PMS, etc. In fact, a couple months ago, I had 2 students, both of whom had 5-year-old daughters who were having severe behavioral problems at school and at home. Very sweet girls, but would throw very violent tantrums and had become quite unmanageable, and of course distressed and disrupted the whole family. And they weren't meaning to do this. It just happened to them. And one of the things you'll learn about is a genetic disorder called pyroluria, which dramatically decreases zinc and B6, leading to anxiety, depression, agitation, sometimes violence, and profound mood out of controlness. And it turned out that both of these little 5-year-old girls had pyroluria. And as soon, like within 2 weeks, because they were little, things work faster with little ones. Within 2 weeks, each of these girls, the behavior like almost completely went away and they became normal again while on the supplements. And I was just talking to one of these mothers this morning, and she said that they'd gone on vacation and had left behind one of the four major supplements for her 5-year-old. And the 5-year-old just disintegrated on this vacation. And they had to actually find a vitamin store and buy the supplement. And as soon as they brought it back in, they were able to go back and have a peaceful, enjoyable vacation. So you will learn how to do this. How do we support your learning? Well, classes meet for 2 hours every other week to give you plenty of time between classes to review the material and to practice with clients or with yourself or family members. You will be put into a learning pod where you get to bounce off other students and build community and get support from each other. You are given a set of learning objectives after every lecture that will tell you what I want you to learn. And then every lecture is followed 2 weeks later by a review session that goes over the learning objectives, reinforces key principles, but also has time for discussion and application. You will have the option of a morning or evening section. Each class is recorded, so you never have to miss anything. Now, as I mentioned, level 1 training is a 6-month course followed by a 4-month internship group where the class presents cases to each other to build competence and confidence. This is then followed by the 8-month level 2, which is the same format, 2 hours every other week. I make myself very available during class and throughout the weeks to answer questions, help with cases, help with your learning. I really want you to succeed. You will be invited to a closed Facebook group for students and alumni for further support and networking opportunity. And even now, you are invited to a free monthly consultation group and a free monthly community forum to ask questions, get more support, and learn from your peers. Mark also runs a free monthly marketing support class called a practice development group, where you get support in building your practice. So this is the program in a nutshell. Mark will be going on and talking about some of our student success stories, as well as the logistics for signing up and, what might be the most useful place to enter into our community. Any questions or comments so far?
What is the cost?
I'll let Mark. Mark, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. I was just going to say, I can. What we would normally do here is run through to obviously fill in the costs and actually, investments in the training with the academy run from kind of $129 upwards. I just wanted to check in. Some people turn up expecting this to kind of be an hour. It's kind of normally an hour and a half, but I'm just wondering. Do either of you needing to dive away? Because it'll probably take me about 20 minutes just to fill in the kind of how it all works bits. But if anybody's needing to dive away, then obviously I'd kind of respect that and give you the information. How are you doing time wise, Donald, Catino? Are you okay for 20 minutes or so? You're right, Donald. Catino, how about you? Are you
Yes, I'm
how
okay.
are you doing time wise? You're all right. Cool.
All
Okay. All right. I don't know if I need you to stop sharing, Christina, before I get to share.
Yeah, I will. So before Mark picks up, any other questions or comments about what I've shared so far? Does it sound like something that would be of benefit to you and your communities? Yeah,
Yes, definitely.
good, good. Well,
So,
we would love to have you join our community any way you want to, from, just coming to one of the free monthly things, or, joining our entire certification program. So Mark will now kind of explain all of the ways that this works together.
Thank you.
cool. Yeah, wonderful. I will do that. Just let me share my screen in here. There we go. So yeah, just kind of very, very briefly, kind of why am I here? Which just gives a bit of background to some of the stuff that we'll also offer you as well. So I'm a consulting collaborative addictionologist working with whole family recoveries, and of course that helps, because actually, if we're going to help somebody, an individual and the whole family, get to 5 years of remission from addiction, we actually have to deal with all of their emotional, mood and mental health, as well as physiological pieces as well, actually. Whilst yes, the addiction is the main thing, we have to do all of the other mood pieces as well. So I've spent the last 20 plus years, I need to update that, 20, probably nearly a quarter of a century now, figuring out how people get through this whole addiction recovery journey. I've run rehab and rehab rescue services in the UK, been quite innovative about how we bring treatment approaches, about how we bring and put together journey approaches, recovery journey approaches for people, as well. I've kind of also been involved in UK health policy changes as well regarding addiction, health policy, etc. Did a couple of years on a primetime TV show, doing whole family addiction recovery journeys as well. And then post running treatment programs in the UK for about 13 years, I went into my own practice, and that again was centered around whole families. And interestingly, I didn't build, so I ran that practice for 7 or so years, and actually I never once really, apart from kind of 6 months at the very early part of it, I actually did the whole thing without doing any online marketing at all. I just actually worked by delivering workshops in local communities, charities, treatment centres, etc. So I would go in, do a workshop, and from each workshop, I would generally get 1 or 2 families who would want to come and work with me. So I kind of got to educate a whole mass of people about my topic, which is addiction recovery. And I got to educate them and reach big numbers of audiences, because that got paid for by the fact that I had 1 or 2 families that would then come and work with me. And I would just work with 12 families a year, at around $10,000 each. So I had a nice practice with 1 or 2 smaller pieces, 150,000 a year, and working to get people through 5-year remission. So I kind of mentioned that because there's more than one way to share our knowledge, and what I had there was the best of both worlds, because I could share really important knowledge with large numbers of people, but at the same time being able to derive an income from it. So the skills, combined with all the skills you've already got from all of your life's experiences and all of your learnings, qualifications that you've already got, and then we add in the learnings from the academy. What can we help you do? Well, build a brand new business or build a brand new community from scratch. That they're obviously improving and extending the range of services and outcomes that you can offer to your existing clients. We're pretty good at helping to put together the ways in which you can integrate new knowledge and skills from the academy with existing skills. Many people that come to the academy are already have multiple other certifications, qualifications, and skill sets, as well as people who come to the academy, as did some of the people that I train with, because they just wanted their family to be well, right? They just wanted to invest in this knowledge and skills to help themselves and their family get well. Because actually that can be a cheaper model than actually paying for healthcare as well. Equally, we have people there that you know are able to sell their skills and services to other treatment programs. So they go in and run specific mental health, addiction, mood repair programs to mental health and addiction services, as well as, you know, some people are already working in treatment programs, and they go from there. One of the great ways that one of the most fabulous things about the academy is the piece there at the bottom, which is about joining collaborative approaches to recovery journeys. When I'm working with a family or an individual, I'm able to say, do you know what, I've actually got a network of, you know, kind of nearly 300 other people around me that I can reach out to, who have got almost every niche and specific skill and specialism, you know, whether they be MDs, functional health practitioners, specialists in trauma, specialists in genetics. You know, within the academy that Christina has got, across the alumni there, there are plenty of people to partner with. So I actually never really wind up ever working with a family all by myself. You know, generally I'm working alongside other people from the academy, and we're working together to create this collaborative recovery approach, which is really cool. Because when I say to clients or potential clients, look, you don't just get me, right? You actually get the whole community. So when we need other skills and other specialisms, they're there, right? You don't have to go looking for them because we've got them already sat there. As Christina said, we've got networking that we do, the practice growth and collaboration group as well. And we're just launching actually a how to put your whole product together and actually get it online and do the digital marketing piece as well, which we're just going to be starting this month. If you want to have a look at, you know, the types of people in the academy, on the academy website there, you can go in the help, get help section. In the drop down menu, we've got our certified coaches directory. Just to give you a little flavor of some of the people that we have there, we have Patty here, who's absolutely our cooking guru, and actually does one of the modules in level 1 for the pro recovery diet piece. We have a naturopath here who works with people with addictions as well. Nutrition for You here. I mean, this lady is actually, she's gone on to write books. She runs 3 or 4 different health programs, which are kind of on demand programs, as well as the fact that she does coaching as well. We have a number of counselors here with all manner of modalities. Lisa Young actually works almost exclusively now with emergency responders and looks after their mental health and their well-being in, you know, incredibly, you know, difficult jobs. We have a family recovery solutions therapist here, Jeff Jones. Tell you a little bit more about him in a minute. And other counselors. We have a binge eating recovery coach as a specialism, a real niche specialism, and actually an MD doctor with the benzotaper doctor. I'll tell you a bit more about her in a minute. But actually with Jeff Jones there, family therapist, he was, you know, many years, quarter century working as an addiction recovery therapist. Over the course of about 3 months, we helped him to transform from being $100 per hour therapist to $150 per hour therapist, actually now he really actually only works with families on kind of 3-month or 1-year programs as well. So total transformation. He doesn't need to worry about filling his diary with you know, 6, 7, 8 clients per day, because actually he gets to work with a restricted number of people at a really kind of good deep level. Lindsay here actually is is an engineer by day job. She's a mum of 4 children, and she was a burnt out mama when she was at child number 2, and she actually went and worked with an immunotherapy coach and figured out just how powerful it is. And she actually now runs a program, a coaching program for burnt out mamas. So 4-month program, just under $3,000. She'd actually been trying for about, she said she'd been around the circuit of trying to get this practice up and running for, you know, kind of about 7 times. But we did it, we got there. And interestingly, we actually got there on 4 hours a week. So she actually runs her entire practice on 16 hours a month. And until she can build it, until it tips the scales, that she then actually moves into this full time and stops being an engineer. With Dr. Madhava, who is an MD. She's a licensed addictions doctor, works in an addictions detox clinic. She's a functional health doctor. She had a specialism and interest in actually tapering people off of benzodiazepines. What we actually did with her, she really wanted to make that a real passion and focus. And actually what we were able to do, we discovered that nobody was helping people to actually fully get well from all of the damage that benzodiazepines do to the individual. So she now has created a complete new practice, which we helped her to do, which is now running a 2 to 4 year program for people to repair all of the health issues that come out of being on benzos long term. And that's a $30,000 to $50,000 program. She's actually got a team of 12 people of all sorts of different specialisms around her, so that she can put, you know, a really high-end intensive program around people. Why is it at that price? Because nobody's ever done it before, and actually she's therefore able to do research alongside this to understand exactly and create, if you like, write the book, write the manual for how you get people into that recovery journey, at which point, you know, the price point will come down. So really pioneering stuff. That's actually led her now to sit on a number of advisory panels in the benzodiazepine recovery world.